Hi, I watched Gladiator 2 on opening night, and I just wanted to take a moment to let all of you know that that movie's awesome. It's stupid, and there's parts of it that don't always make sense, but it's awesome. It is largely repeating a lot of stuff that the first movie did, and at first going into this, I thought it was going to be like mostly just a standalone sequel. You didn't really need to know anything about the first movie. It would just be repeating a similar story about a guy who becomes a gladiator, goes to the Colosseum, and wants to get revenge on someone high up in Roman society. And that's all true, but it also does tie into the events of the first movie a lot, and it ties into Maximus Decimus Meridius and some of the things he did back during the events of the first movie. And I feel like it would have been better if it was standalone, but, you don't need to watch the first one before this, I guess, but I would still recommend watching the first one because that movie's awesome. It is rare that a movie can be this epic. Not just in terms of like the battle scenes and seeing how big everything is, but just the characters are so over the top and larger than life. And sometimes that comes across as a bit silly. Like in the sequel, we have two emperors, they're twin brothers, and yeah, their performances are a little silly. It's meant to be silly. They're meant to be kind of the crazy guys in charge. Like there'll be a big scene where someone gets horribly butchered, and then they go, "Oh, magnificent, magnificent! I love this!" Oh, like so they're a little over the top. I've seen some people be annoyed by them, but I was fine with it because number one, they're not in the movie that much, and number two, that was clearly deliberate. Like I loved all the characters and all the performances so much because it fits so well even when it's over the top. But the one that stands out most is Denzel Washington because man, that guy is just so fucking cool. I don't know how he does it, but Denzel Washington might be the coolest man in existence. Like his character is, smart and scheming and conniving, and he buys the main character dude, Paul Mescal. He buys him as a slave and forces him to go to the Colosseum and everything, but he also has his own plans going on. And it doesn't matter how evil he is and how convoluted and scheming his plans get, he's just so cool. It's impossible to hate him because again, it's Denzel Washington. No matter what he does, you just can't help but be pulled in. He just has so much magnetism and so much charisma. I loved every second that he was on screen. Pedro Pascal is also great because at first the main character is trying to get revenge on him, but he's really not the one at fault for this. Like, in a weird way, they're kind of on the same side because there's so much scheming and political maneuvering going on in the story. I don't want to give away too much. But they're largely on the same side, and seeing how that eventually culminates is actually pretty interesting. But as much as I love Pedro Pascal, he doesn't have that much to do. At the beginning of the movie, he does a lot of stuff, but then as it goes on, his role just gets smaller and smaller, and it seems to just kind of fade away by the end, which I was disappointed by. But the only character that I was actually, disappointed by and wish he had a bit more to him was, weirdly enough, the protagonist, played by Paul Mescal. I mean, think about it. In the first movie, you had Maximus Decimus Meridius, played by Russell Crowe, and he has so many iconic moments. He has the "Are you not entertained?" bit. He has the bit where he literally just says his name and what he's there to do and who he's going to get revenge on. And those are just such huge moments from the movie. And even the ones that are less iconic, like the part where some Praetorians try to assassinate him, and one of them, his sword gets stuck in its sheath, and he goes, "Frost, sometimes it makes the blade stick." He just has so many lines like that, which stand out so much and make it clear that, yeah, this character is amazing, and there's also depth to him and everything. And in the new movie, he doesn't really have anything like that. Paul Mescal's performance isn't bad, and I don't think his character's bad either, but he just doesn't have anything near the level of what Russell Crowe did in the first one. There is one line, I'm not going to give it away, but it involves a wooden sword. That line is on par with some of the stuff from the first movie, but it's only the one brief moment. And of course, you can't talk about Gladiator or pretty much any Ridley Scott production really without mentioning the battle sequences because these are fucking incredible. Not only are they like weird and creative, like they're not always accurate to history, if you've seen the trailers, you've seen like the guy riding on the back of a rhinoceros, and there's a scene where they flood the Colosseum, which did actually happen in history. But in the movie, they put sharks in the water, so when dudes fall in, they get eaten. That I don't think really happened, but I honestly didn't care. I was sitting there going, yes, this is cinema. Like, you feel the size of it, and the weight of every sword swing and every arrow that gets fired, man, it is incredible. I loved all the action sequences. However, this does have the same problem that the first movie had, where throughout most of the first movie, you had these big, amazing action sequences. You had the opening battle against the Germanic barbarians, and then you had like the various battles in the Colosseum, and they're great. But by the time you reach the climax, it's really just two dudes sword fighting. And I mean, it's not bad, but it's pretty underwhelming compared to everything that came before. But then you look at the second movie and it's pretty much the same. You know, you have an opening battle sequence, which is fucking phenomenal. It really, really is. And then you have some crazy sequences in the Colosseum, like, hey, let's have guys fight a bunch of really angry baboons, which does happen, and it's really incredible. Or the rhinoceros bit, or the flooding and the sharks, like, that's all incredible. And then you get to the end, and the final action sequence isn't bad, but it's kind of underwhelming. I don't know, man. Like, there's obviously more complaints and criticisms I could make here, but I just didn't care. You know, like pointing out how the villains' plots don't always make a whole lot of sense and they just kind of work out just because, I don't really care. Pointing out historical inaccuracies, I don't really care. Anytime I think back at this movie, I think back at the battle sequences and the dudes getting eaten by sharks, and I'm thinking, yes, this is fucking cinema. This is what movies are meant to be like. So, if you like the first Gladiator movie at all, check out Gladiator 2. It's really good.